Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. So this is part 4 of a 4-part series on color mixing dark rich browns, and it comes from a comment that I got on my website. Now as if this is the first video you've seen out of the series, so I'm just going to kind of briefly go over it. You can see the other videos in the playlist on the YouTube channel, or that's really the only place you can get the actual thing, because on the Facebook page there is no particular order for everything. The actual comment that I got was, I try to use really dark brown when painting animals and wildlife in the forest, but it always looks so dull and boring. I'm wasting so much paint. Can you help me? And then I explained basically in the other video that creating a brown depends on the scene. Is the brown thing in grass or in the forest, in shadow, in light? Because that depends. That helps with the reflection color. So I did the first 3 videos using basic colors, changing, shifting a little bit, and in this final one, get that paper out of the way. And then this final one, going over now, working with some compliments, and I'm going to be answering a pop quiz question from video 3 on the darkest chromatic black possible. Okay. So what I've got, I'm going to be using the DecoArt Traditions colors. They're the easiest for color mixing because they're so high in pigment and they're nice and creamy. Burnt Umber, Phthalo Green Blue, Phthalo Blue, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Naphthol Red Light, and Paranone Orange. All right, so we're going to start first. The idea is to make a dark, rich brown. And when I think of dark, rich brown, I always go to anything that's really, really dark. I always go to Chromatic Black, which is black made with color. Now, if you're new to the channel and you're interested in color mixing, go to the playlist for in YouTube for that, or you can head over to the private Facebook group. The link is in the description below, where I've got a color mixing course that's available for free. I don't like using black out of the tube other than painting the iris of an eye or something that has to be completely opaque. I like making my own black color with, and I've got different ways of doing it, different formulations. Typically it's a blue and a brown. Except for the pop quiz question I'm going to be answering in this video, showing you a different way of doing it. So the idea of making a dark rich brown, you can use complements, you can use intense colors, again the blue and the brown. So I want to start first to continue on with the other videos. We're going to work with Phthalo Blue, and I'm missing a color. Oh shoot. Oh, hang on. Missing a color. Burnt Sienna. Burnt Sienna is my core color for Chromatic Black. Burnt Sienna, Ultramarine Blue, or Burnt Sienna and Phthalo Blue. Here we go. If you guys can you guys see everything there? Make sure that I'm all in. All right, so we're gonna go over here, and I covered the paper with a layer of gesso. That's so when we mix the colors, it doesn't sink into the paper. I'm gonna use the palette as much as possible. So we're going to work with Burnt Sienna first and a little bit of Phthalo Blue. And you saw in the videos before where I made an actual color string. I'm not going to do that in this one because I have so many mixes to go to. But watch the other videos where you can see how I made the color strings. So on paper, that is super dark. That is a really super dark color. So on paper, this makes a nice chromatic black, except when it comes to adding highlights, that's where things can change. So we want to see the true underlying color, so I'm going to add a little bit of white. And, oh wow, this is a really deep, rich blue-green-gray. Well, what if we did the same thing with Phthalo Blue and Burnt Umber? A little bit. You only need a small amount of Phthalo Blue. Well, a bit more than that. Phthalo blue is a blue that leans towards green. That's why a lot of the mixtures look green. Wow, look at that. That's even nicer. Okay, so on paper, it's a really rich color, but we add white to see the true underlying color. And again, it's still it's more gray than green. Okay. So it doesn't really lend itself to a brown. Well, how it can though. When we're mixing a chromatic black, you start with your base chromatic black, and I typically say equal parts, but because the phthalo colors are so powerful, you don't need a lot. And then you shift them. So you create your base, and then you do a test. And you say, okay, well, we'll work with this one. So I'm looking at this one, and I'm going, okay, well, it's still not brown enough. You take the mixture. That's with the burnt umber, and add more brown. I just go right into the white. I want it to be vibrant, and this is what we end up with. Now we have a deep brown. There we go. Take a bit more white just to see the true underlying color. Yeah, that's a brown now. So by adding just a little bit more of the brown, it's a really, really rich brown. It's not a flat brown. You're not going to get a flat brown so much with burnt umber, although burnt umber with white is not, it's not something that's an attractive color. It's really red. It has a lot of red. That's why I like it adding with a little bit of the blue to create even a darker brown that's more neutral. Okay, so we've got the burnt sienna and we've got the burnt umber with the phthalo blue. Well, what if we think of the color wheel working with opposites? So we didn't do this in any of the other videos. So let's take phthalo blue. That's going to be way too much. Let's go here and yeah, so that might be a little much. Let's go with naphthol red light. So although not a opposite on the color wheel, it's a red orange. And when you're color mixing, right now we're just mixing the two colors, you can always add in a third. So don't feel that you have to do your color mixing with one color. Look at that. On paper, that is a beautiful, dark, rich brown. Well, we need to see the true underlying color, right? Because we want to do some highlights. You want to stick with, try to stick with your base color and then add white. Look how red that is. Now, that's not saying it's wrong. This is just saying if you were to use this as your brown, then add a little bit of white to create your highlight colors, you're going to get this. That doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, that doesn't mean it's wrong. So you can try and say, well, if you're painting, let's say, a brown dog, and let's say the brown dog is in a garden full of purple flowers, then yeah, that would work out. But if the brown dog is next to a yellow wall, then that might not be a choice. You may want to work with something that's, say, you might want to work with this mixture and then add a little bit of yellow to it. Do you see where I'm going here? So let's take now phthalo blue. Whoops, I already got phthalo blue with orange. This is did I call out the colors? I don't know if I called out the colors for you guys. So Paranone orange, naphthol red light, permanent alizarin crimson, phthalo blue, phthalo green blue, burnt umber, and burnt sienna. And if I did call them out, sorry for the duplication. Okay, so I'm getting orange with the phthalo blue now. And anytime you work with column opposites on the color wheel, I think mud. But look how deep that color is. That is rich. So these are really beautiful, beautiful mixtures, chromatic blacks as is. Okay, they're really solid. They're not flat. And then, of course, now we want to see the true underlying color. That is gorgeous. Look at that. I would say that that mixture I just did is a perfect chromatic black, because when you add the white, you want it, it should be a gray. You should be getting a gray. So phthalo blue with Paranone orange is a really nice color for chromatic black. Because now what you're going to have is you're going to have a neutral highlight, which is much easier to shift now depending on the surroundings. So if you take this mixture, so phthalo blue and Paranone orange, and let's say whatever it is that you're painting is in a garden of purple flowers, then you can add a little bit more, let's say this to make it a bit more purple, blue and red, or a violet. If it's in a garden that's got a little bit more, yellow, or let's say against a yellow wall, you can think of, okay, maybe add a little bit more yellow. Or let's say, I don't know, a brick wall, whatever color is surrounding, so you're going to get some of that highlight, you can then shift that a little bit more for the highlights. Okay? It's important to know, though, what's in the actual base of the color, so it helps with your color mixing. So like in order to get this here, if you want to shift this to more yellow, that's going to be hard because this is already leans toward violet. Violet and yellow, they're opposites on the color wheel. So you're going to get blah. Okay? You're going to get blah. How technical is that? Alrighty, so that takes care of that one. So what happens now if we say, well, let's say, I want to make sure I do this in the right order where I don't give away the answer too quickly for the pop quiz from yesterday. Let's say I want to work with, actually, I'll just get this out of the way, get my paper towel and my coffee cup. I don't want to, I'm out of coffee. Let's work with, make another mixture. Let's see, let's take some burnt umber. Yeah, I want to make sure I don't give away the answer. Yeah, okay, so burnt umber, and then now I'm going to take some, let's say, an equal part of alizarin crimson. Now, this is not true alizarin crimson. True alizarin crimson is very fugitive. It fades very quickly in light. So many manufacturers, they've come up with their own formulation to create a alternative to true alizarin crimson, and DecoArts is permanent alizarin crimson. It's a single pigment PR177. A lot of manufacturers, they mix the colors together. I like using DecoArts single pigment because it's easier to predict mixes made with this color. Where if you're working with a manufacturer that mixes colors together, you don't know exactly what the ratio is of the colors they're using. And then on top of that, if they stop making that color, you're screwed. But with this one here, if they stop making this pigment, PR177 is all I have to look for. They already stopped making transparent red iron oxide. They better not stop making this one. Oh my goodness. All right, so burnt umber with an equal part of permanent alizarin crimson. So let's start this one here. Permanent alizarin crimson is a red that leans towards violet on steroids. It is so strong. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, I already know that I have too much crimson in there. I'll show you why. Take some white. Look how strong that is. Okay, that is too much. Too much red. Okay, so I did my base. Well, now I start analyzing. Okay, well, I've got my base. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to take that color now. I need to shift it. Well, I need to shift it with a little bit more brown because it's got too much red in it. So let's go here. Let's add a little bit more brown. So burnt umber. Now, burnt umber is a reddish brown. And I should have cut that in half because I need another. I'm going to need that mixture for the next exercise. There we go. See how that, just adding a little bit of extra brown just changed it up? There we go. Say, well, you might say, Gisele, I really like that brown, but it's still too red. when you're painting, let's say I'm thinking of, I keep using the reference back to black hair, a black bear, black dog, black cat, because they're not always just black, because depending on how the light hits it or their undercoat, that the hair takes on either a reddish or a bluish tone. So you may say, well, Gisele, the black bear that I'm painting, it's not red. Okay, this is too red. What do I do? Okay, well now we start getting a little bit more detailed. I want to make this mixture again. So it was alizarin crimson and an equal part of burnt umber. Is that about right? Let's try that. All right. So we have that mixture. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I know that when I analyze this color, I'm going to have to add a little bit more burnt umber to that. I think I had a little bit too much sienna there. And let's get a bit of white. Yeah, it's better, okay? So I'm thinking, well, all right, so this is the colors that I've got. I love the richness here. I need to tone that down a little bit. Do I just add more brown? Well, if you add just more brown, you're going to be turning it brown. I just want to neutralize it a little bit. Well, the way to neutralize it is you look at the color wheel. And this is now I'm going to give the answer to the pop quiz of yesterday. The darkest chromatic black that you can get is alizarin crimson and viridian / phthalo green. That's the darkest because they're the most intense and they're the darkest. So I would think, okay, well, I know I've got alizarin crimson in here. To neutralize it, I can use phthalo green. Now there's phthalo green blue and there's phthalo green yellow. That's where you can experiment with the two. So I'm going to take my phthalo green here. I'm going to go right in here and start off with a very, very small amount because it is so strong. Now it's hard to see on the palette, so I'm going to have to add some white. See the difference? Just by adding a little bit of green. It's still a little bit on the violet side. So we can take to this, add a little bit more. Now I think I'm going to run out of paint. And do these experiments. You know, I ran out of paint, so I'm going to do a little bit more. So I'll take a bit more crimson and equal parts. Make sure it's equal parts of burnt umber. Okay, then bring in some phthalo green. If you add too much phthalo green, it's going to be green. What we're doing is we're counteracting the colors with red and green because they are opposite on the color wheel. I'm going to get another brush to add the white so I don't have to keep rinsing this brush. Okay, so that's basically what we had before. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add a bit more green. And remember, this is stronger on the red side because burnt umber is a brown that leans towards red. It's a reddish brown. There we go, look at that. Just by adding a bit more green. Let's push this a little bit further. We've got to be careful now. We're getting really close. I would say I'm using about half the amount of phthalo green in relation to the alizarin crimson. And what I'm going to do after is I'm actually going to make just chromatic black with green and crimson. See, it's becoming more and more gray. Let's push it a little bit more. This may be too much. And just take some white. Let me just bring that down a little bit more, just so it makes the mixing a little bit easier. Yeah, now it's taking a shift a little bit more towards the green. So right here, not saying that this is wrong, but this is actually really pretty right here. But you see how we're just adding a little bit more green, a little bit more green, a little bit more. Do you know how many bottles of paint you would have to get all these mixtures if you wanted to buy them pre-mixed? Just learning the color mixing of the basic elements will save you so much money. Not so good for the paint companies because they want to sell paint, but that's not my job. My job is to educate you. For those of you that really want to take your painting a little bit more seriously and learn color mixing. So now let's work with doing that nice chromatic black. So to make that chromatic black just with alizarin crimson, again, we're going to start with equal parts. More. Got to be so careful. All right, so now this phthalo green is phthalo green that leans towards blue. This is alizarin crimson that leans towards violet. So red that leans towards violet, which has blue. Green that leans towards blue. So it's probably going to be more blue than I want, or more blue-green than I want. So we'll have to see. Yeah, it is. I love this mixture. I absolutely love this mixture. There's one color that Decor makes. I don't even know if they make it anymore. I think it was called Sapphire in Traditions. Take some white. Oh, let me just make that a little bit bigger. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Not sapphire. Is it sapphire? I don't think this is beautiful. God, I love that. It's like a dusty blue-gray. Look how gorgeous that is. So I can turn around and say, okay, well, that's still, you know, I can then, from here, then I can shift it. Do I want it more red? Do I want it more green? Let's go with a bit more green. Oh, wrong pile of paint. Wrong pile of paint. Now I added an equal amount of phthalo green. Usually I shift it by little bits, just to give you a really big step change. This is going to be much more green. Look at the difference. Just by an equal amount to what was in there. Oops, I added too much green. What do? You can take that same color, then you can add just a little bit more alizarin crimson to it. And just start building it back up. See how it's just becoming now a little bit more. And while you're learning, you may not, you may say, well, this is an awful lot of work. It is an awful lot of work. But just think of how much you're learning and, all these colors that you can make without having to buy all this extra paint. This is the most flexible you're going to get when it comes to mixing your colors. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, so now we are back to this step. One step over, okay, but not to this degree. So now we can say, okay, now I'm going to shift it a little slower. So now where we went from here to here, we're going to go from here, just a little, went from here to here. Now we're going to go a little bit more green, not as much. Maybe a bit more than that. That may not be enough. White. Not quite. It's shifting just a little bit more green. I'm gonna scoot up there. I know that's gonna be too much. Phthalo colors, you have to be very, very careful. And now a little bit of white. Whoops, too much white. There we go. You can see how we're just so here to here to here to here. And now with the next one that I add will even look a little bit more green. So this is the shifting where depending on this rich brown that you're painting, it all depends, or this chromatic black, it all depends on, I've run out of paint now. Let me just add the white to here. It all depends on what you're going to be painting. Like, take your dark color, then shift it depending on the situation for your highlights. Okay. So we've got, so I'm looking here now that things have dried, so I can see where I've got these beautiful rich browns. Just by shifting the colors, okay, my absolute favorite is the Phthalo Blue and the Pear-Known Orange. I absolutely love that mixture. That makes a really nice stain if it was on plain paper. That's the dirty paint water. Gotta use everything. So to further experiment, then you do it on your own time, but you can then say, well, if Phthalo Blue and Pear-Known Orange makes a beautiful rich brown, what would happen if you took Phthalo Blue, a red, and a yellow? You're going to get something different because Pear-Known Orange is PO43. It's a single pigment. If you take a red, like Naphthol Red Light, which is also a single pigment, PR9, and then a yellow, that's going to look a bit different. Let's do it now. Let's do it. Which yellow? Oh, let's take Hansa Yellow Medium. Let's go ahead. Let's do it. Might as well finish off on a good note here. So this is Hansa Yellow Medium, which is a yellow that leans towards orange. And now we're gonna have to make more paper. So I'm gonna do this right on paper because I don't have any more paper left. That's primed. So Phthalo Blue and Naphthol Red Light, which is a red that leans towards orange, and Hansa Yellow Medium. Okay, so I've got about equal parts. So ratio wise, I'm gonna kind of go right in the middle. And I can see that's becoming more green. I need to bring in more red. The Phthalo Blue is really strong. Let's bring that in there. And the Phthalo Blue as well is transparent. The Hansa Yellow Medium should be semi. Where is it? Yeah, semi-transparent. Naphthol Red Light is semi-transparent. And then the Phthalo Blue should be transparent. It says semi-transparent. I think it's more transparent. Looking at this. Now we need to test it. Whoa. So what does this tell me? This tells me that the Phthalo Blue and the Hansa Yellow Medium are much more stronger in intensity than Naphthol Red Light. So now this is where you analyze. Okay, what do I need to do to bring this more to a not so green? You need to add more red. I'm going to add more red. Should have tried it with the alizarin crimson. That would have been interesting. So now this is sinking into the paper. I don't have much now for mixing. This is why I should always work with gesso paper. Look at that. What a difference just by adding an extra part of Naphthol Red Light. You've got a violet. It's more violet now. Well, if we didn't, let's say, well, can we turn around and let me think. Bring in a little bit more yellow, just a speck. I don't know if I'll be able to, I don't know if I'll have enough paint there. There we are. I'm going to explain what I did. All right, so I turned around, so I created my mixture, my dark, rich, beautiful brown using Phthalo Blue, Naphtha Red Light, and Hansa Yellow Medium. I'm going to write this down because, write this down with what? Because I'm going to forget and I don't want to get this wrong for you guys. 20 years ago, I would have been able to remember, but not now. So Phthalo Blue and Naphtha Red Light and Hansa Yellow Medium. That's this mix here. So with that, I mixed that in here and I got green, which means it was more of Phthalo Blue and Hansa Yellow Medium and then Naphtha Red Light. So this is basically not enough of that. Then this color is now, I added more Naphtha Red Light plus Naphtha Red Light. I got to that. Still a bit too red. I want to neutralize it. So I can see here that it's more violet. It's got a little bit more violet into it. Think of the color wheel. What's opposite to violet? Yellow. So this here is again the same mixture, same mix, plus Hansa Yellow Medium. What's happening is that your yellow is neutralizing this violet to make it more brown. And then if you really wanted to, you could then start tweaking. And I encourage you. You may say, well, I'm wasting so much paint. Okay, you're not wasting paint when you're doing this. You're investing in your education. Okay, think of it as an investment into your education. You are learning. There's not enough learning going on. Everybody's looking for a shortcut. Take the time and learn and play with the colors. So you can see that it's going, and then from here, you can further experiment saying, okay, well, I want to make this, what happens if I add a bit more yellow? What happens if I make this mixture using alizarin crimson instead? What happens? Let's try. Let's try. I've got all this paint on the palette. Let's try. Phthalo Blue. I know what's going to happen. I know. These two together make the most kick butt. I was going to say kick whatever, but young people watching, kick butt violet makes a, well, here. This makes a really interesting. I better write this down. Get my brush. And let's add some white. Look at that. Oh my God, I love that color. Love that color. Love it, love it, love it. So we take, I need to borrow some paint right here. So we did Phthalo Blue, Naphtha Red Light, and Hansa Yellow Medium. So now we're going to do Phthalo Blue, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, and now let's add a little bit of yellow. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. This mixture, with how blue it is, by adding yellow, what happens when you add blue and yellow together? Some white. Oh. It didn't turn green. Wow, what a surprise. Did you buy my acting gig here? What a surprise. Why didn't it turn green? Pop quiz. Why did, well, I actually have to answer it. Why did it turn green? Pause the video. Answer the question. Phthalo Blue and Permanent Alizarin Crimson are so strong, they overpower Hansa Yellow Medium. Overpowers it. You would have to add a lot more yellow to shift it more towards green. I can do this all day long. There we go. We're starting. Look at that. See, just by adding an extra part of yellow, now we're shifting more green. So this is Phthalo Blue, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Hansa Yellow Medium. And then we're taking this mixture plus Hansa Yellow Medium. Okay? So you see where I'm going here? So now you can expand your own experiment. Okay, what about if I do this instead of Phthalo Blue? Use ultramarine blue. Use turquoise blue. Use cerulean blue. Use cobalt blue. Or instead of using Permanent Alizarin Crimson, try, what if I use quinacridone magenta What if I use quinacridone violet? What if I use red violet? You're still using the same paints, your same limited palette. It's making those paint combinations that really lets you explore and get all these different colors. Like it's unreal how much benefit you get out of learning the basics of color mixing. My camera is shaking. Sorry about that. So we have our rich browns, and then it's just a matter of then just shifting. So the actual base color is that chromatic black, but then it's just shifting it. Well, what if we turn around and say, well, I like this color, but I want it more brown. I don't want that highlight to be green. Then this is where you think, okay, well, if I want it more brown, what do I have to do? You can add something that would lean it more towards brown, and you can add the burnt umber, you can add the burnt sienna. You know you can get any color in the world with just red, blue, and yellow. But it depends which red, which blue, and which yellow. Having these browns already in your palette, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and raw umber, and also raw sienna, which is I don't use very often, having those colors in your palette, it's a bit of a shortcut to get the colors you want. But just by knowing, what you have to do to counteract, well, if I want a bit more brown, well, I can turn around and say, well, what if I add a little bit more red to it? A red that leans towards orange. And then add white. Well, it's dulling down. Still not as red as I want. Well, if I add a bit more red. And I don't know if I might be able to get one more mixture out of this. Oh, there we go. There we go. We're starting to get a little bit more. Now, I'm looking at these colors. I'm showing you with the white so you can see the true underlying color. This is becoming more gray now. So now we can turn around and say, well, what if I hit it with a little bit more red? Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get any more out of this. Take white. And now that base color is more red. You can just see from how it's shifted. So you would use this here. You would use this color here for your your rich brown. Then add the white to see what the true underlying color is. Then if you wanted to turn around, you want to make this more of a golden color, then you can turn around and say, well, I can then take, I don't know, we'll just say we'll just add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. And then add white. I don't think I have enough paint there. Come on, come on, come on, come on. So it's not as blue, but it's a little bit more red because burnt sienna is a brown that has red-orange in it. All right, so from here, again, all these same colors, and you just explore, know your color wheel, explore, know what happens when you use opposites on the color wheel, know what happens when you use transparent versus opaque, know what happens when you use a color that leans towards one way versus another, phthalo green that leans towards blue versus phthalo green that leans towards yellow. What happens if you use a red that leans towards violet versus a red that leans towards orange? What happens when you use a yellow that leans towards orange versus a yellow that leans towards green? What happens when you use a neutral yellow, like Hansa Yellow, or a neutral red, like Naphthol Red? So you have all these questions that you can ask, and the best way is, instead of just assuming what's going to happen, get it down on paper, do your experiments, get it down on paper, document, add the white to see the true underlying colors. That's really the best way for you to learn how to work these colors, and if at all possible, do it under a consistent lighting condition. So if you're next to a window when doing these experiments, close your window, because as the lighting changes, so will as the outdoor light changes, so will how you see the color mixes. So I'm in front of a window, but I have my drapes closed. So how I do my color mixing right now would be the same as it is at 4 o'clock in the morning, at high noon, and at 8 o'clock at night. It'd be the same because there's no outside light coming in to affect how I see these colors. Okay, I wouldn't do color mixing experiments outside anyways because of how the lights change, how the sun, as the sun moves and all that stuff. So try to do it in the same lighting conditions. That way you're going to be consistent every single time. All right. So I hope that this 4-part series helps you understand how to color mix dark rich browns and then to shift them using different colors on the color wheel, color that, whether they shift towards one way or another way, transparency versus opacity, whether and which browns to use, how to take a color and shift it, complete opposite directions. So again, practice, try and see what happens, to try to come up with your own variations. Now, if there's something very specific you're looking for, go to artplace.ca, click the contact link, and then send me a message of specifically what you're looking for color mixing. And if possible, get specific, because just saying I'm trying to paint a red flower, that doesn't help me. If you have a reference photo, send me a picture of the well, you'll have to send me a message first, and then I'll have to give you my email address so you can send me the picture. Or if you have something from Pexels or Pixabay, just send me the link, and then I'll give you a hand. But if you send the message through artplace.ca, I respond to every single message that I get through the website. Alrighty. So again, I hope that you enjoyed this. Share in the comments below if there's any aha moments that you had, or if you've got a favorite dark brown mixture that you've made up. Share the brand of the paints, the colors, and anything specific with your formulation, just so we can all learn from each other. And if you've done this experiment and you'd like to share a picture, either post a link to where it's online, or best is to go into the description below, head on over to the private Facebook group and post your picture in there. Okay, I'm done. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. And until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.